next guest and speaker, Danae Walker, is experienced in helping folks get their home and workspaces organized and in order. I thought that was really appropriate because in 25 years of doing financial planning and work with folks such as yourself, I've noticed a trend that a lot of times we're trying to fix and get things in order in a lot of ways. And that includes areas that I am not, the professional who can help you with. However, it's not uncommon for folks to be talking to me as they are transitioning, right sizing, downsizing, etc., about all the stuff they have and what to do with it. It's not uncommon for us to talk about what happens not just financially, but emotionally when they're having a major transition in their lives. So, in your lives. So, with that, I wanted to include someone like Danae who really lives in that world and can guide you. I have been someone who has needed people like Danae to help me in my life. And so, with that, Danae?
Okay, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Michelle. I'm really excited to be here to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, talking about decluttering, organizing, and how it affects your mental health. I've been doing this for some time now, and I have definitely seen a direct correlation with my clients and people that I work with of the amount of clutter and the amount of mental stress that they have. So, today, I'm going to talk about how resetting your space will reset your mind. So, as Michelle said, I'm Danae Walker. I am the owner and a professional organizer at Declutter by Danae. I've been in business for going on 3 years full time now, and I like to say that I help busy women create homes that support their energy, focus, and well being. Um, I created a method called the Declutter Method that works off of your persona type to understand where your setbacks are in the decluttering process, also, and how to move forward from those setbacks. Outside of that, I have been so generously featured in Forbes, Better Homes and Gardens, House Beautiful, and so many other publications. So I am here to share my knowledge and my experience with you all today. So as we go through this presentation, hopefully you'll find some tips that'll be helpful for you to move forward with your decluttering process. Why does this even matter? Have you ever felt overwhelmed in your home? Like you come home and you look around and there's piles and there's stacks and there's untended mail and things like that. And it's just really stressful. You can't relax. Your home is supposed to be your place of solitude, not solitude, your place of relaxation and peace. But when you have these stacks and piles and things everywhere, it's hard for you to ever fully unwind and fully relax. And after dealing with this day in, day out, you really have no time to turn your brain off and you feel just overwhelmed. And that turns into other things as part of your health, as far as your mental health and your stress and your anxiety. So having a home that reflects how you want the peace in your brain is very important for us to be able to function the way we want to function. So, what does all these little piles of things do to your brain? First of all, visual clutter is a constant stimulation, whether you realize it or not. All these little things are little micro decisions that you're constantly making. Every time you see a stack of mail, your brain is in the background is saying, oh, do I need to go through that? I didn't pay that bill. I need to file that away. Just constant stimulation. You never get to rest. All of that is going to lead to decision fatigue and irritability. I know that sometimes when I come home and there's something, say there's a pile of laundry that I haven't gotten to yet just because I've been busy, I start getting aggravated because now I'm like, ugh, I have to deal with this, or somebody else didn't deal with it, and now we have to decide whose turn is it this time. This is part of the problem when you don't have systems in place to deal with all these micro tasks throughout your home. That clutter all turns into stress and burnout. I'm sure you've heard that whenever you're stressed out, your cortisol level rises. That turns into insomnia, that turns into anxiety, that turns into headaches, that turns into you being grouchy. And it also, when you have these clutter piles all over the place, it increases that feeling of being behind. You always feel like there's something you have not done yet. Um, and if you haven't built in your systems and built in the time to address these things, it just snowballs into bigger problems. So now, like I mentioned before, your brain is always kind of in this constant state of making decisions. And you're not turning it off. When you're looking at all of these different piles, it's hard to be able to turn it off. It steals all of your energy by adding these little tiny micro decisions. Where did I leave my purse? Where did I leave my keys? Is I can't find the measuring tape. Did I leave it in the basement or is it in the junk drawer? All these little micro decisions really slow you down throughout your daily routine. Um, especially people when you have kids and you don't have systems in place, it's hard getting out of the door because nobody knows where their stuff is. And it's very difficult for you to get things moving when you need to, which causes that headache again because now you have to manage trying to find everything. A lot of that will also turn into guilt and just extra mental noise, that hidden energy drain that just keeps running in the background of your mind. But what do we do about it, right? First thing I want to talk about is shifting your mindset. As an organizer, a lot of times people think, oh, you go into people's house and tell them to just throw out everything. No, I don't. It's not all about erasing what you have in your home. Decluttering is about editing. It's about holding on to the things that add value to your life and add it's everything that you're using now in this season of life. It's about the things that you love, you need, and you enjoy. A lot of times, even if you're not a minimalist, which I'm not, you have this visual abundance, but you love those things, and that's perfect. But it's not causing you um, a headache because it's not in the way, and you can find your things. You can have that visual maximalism, and that's fine. But it's keeping the things you love and having a clear system to be able to find the things you need when you need it. Having these systems also is about creating the calm in your life. It's not just willpower. You can't just will these systems into place. I wish it was that easy. We could just snap a finger and say, hey, this is done, and everything lands where it's supposed to land. We start these projects sometimes and your motivation fades. You pull out everything out of your closet and you say, okay, this Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to go through everything. Doesn't always work like that. You can try it if you like. I don't even do that with my clients because I think it's too overwhelming. So we create habits so that you don't have to do these massive organization projects all at once. And once you create the habits and you get the system in place, putting things away is so much easier, so much faster, and will help you be able to have the time to relax and do the things that you really love. So now I have this framework that gives you a feeling of wellness at home. So number one, the goal is to have less visual noise. And like I mentioned, the maximalism and having a lot of art and figurines and things like that. I'm not talking about those sort of things because those are not things that I would consider noise. Artwork is not noise. Visual noise are piles of clutter that you don't know what to do with. The things that do not have a home, the things that are not serving any purpose, but you haven't dealt with yet. Those are those unfinished decisions. Those are all that procrastination that you're doing. That's what I mean when I say visual noise. A lot of that comes from not having clear drop zones and not having clear homes for your belongings. How many times have I heard like, oh, my kids, they come home and they just throw their backpacks on the floor and they kick their shoes all over the house. That's because they don't know where to put them. Or maybe there's no system of when am I, what do I do with this when I come home? And there's no follow up with it. So now we want to teach you about having daily reset habits so this doesn't become a problem and it's not a constant chase down of where do I put my things and following up with everyone. So let's start with reducing visual noise. Some of the biggest focus areas I like to think about and I see are common problem areas in the homes are these flat surfaces. How many people have their countertops covered with mail or your coffee table has cords for your iPhone and things like that on it. Your nightstands has a stack of unread books and expired vitamins that you haven't taken. Any kind of open shelving, it's a gift and a curse. Not everyone can keep that open shelving looking nice and ends up extra glasses and all sorts of things land there. And then, of course, the floors, shoes kicked over everywhere, backpacks and purses, and just anything landing on the floor. So all these little places, and quite honestly, some of these things could be dangerous, tripping hazards and things like that. So the best rule to live by is if it doesn't serve you in your day-to-day life, it should not have prime real estate out in the open. So let's try to find a home for these items so that they're not adding to the visual noise. Another thing we can do very quickly is just have a 5 item surface reset. If you do this every night, just 5 things off of the countertop, 5 things off of the coffee table, 5 things off of your nightstand, or maybe just 5 things in general in the house. Remove it from that surface and put it away where it's supposed to be. Think about where it needs to be. And don't just move it from the nightstand to the top of the dresser. Think about if it's something you actually need and if it can be removed from the home, if it can be donated or trashed. One thing I do always recommend that you do is keep a donation area in your house, whether that's a box in the back of your closet or in the mud room or something. And as you come across things that are donation worthy, drop them in the box or the bag and take them out when you can. Um, just remember all those little small wins, all those little micro habits that you do over time. It will lower your stress and create momentum. Sometimes when you start this 5 item reset, you get that extra win and you're feeling good. So um, you'll you'll build that momentum and want to work on another area. Maybe it turns into 10 or 15 items. So just at least get started. And that's something you can start tonight. Number 2, drop zones is a big stress point. We need somewhere to put our things. And when you're thinking about your drop zones, think about how you function in your house. If you come in and you automatically drop your bag on the floor near the door, maybe you need a hook there. I'm not telling you put it away somewhere that doesn't make any sense just because it's out of the way. Think about how you move through your home. So some of the common things that people have no solutions for are the bags, whether that's backpacks, work bags, purses, things like that. Mail, a lot of times they end up on the kitchen counter and it becomes a headache. And next thing you know, it's 2 weeks later and you have a stack of mail that hasn't been addressed. Shoes, there's no clear system for where are we putting our shoes. We're just kicking them off when we come in the door and they become a tripping hazard when you walk in. And the same thing with keys. How many times have I heard people say, oh my gosh, I have nowhere. Sometimes my keys are on the counter here. Sometimes they're in my purse. Sometimes I leave them on my desk in my office. There's no designated spot. And so, which causes you to look for them every time you need to leave the house. When it comes to shoes, I like a nice shoe rack. If you're a shoes off home, have a nice shoe rack by the door or in the coat closet near the door. Mail, I usually recommend addressing mail as soon as you walk in the door. Things that can be recycled, have a recycle bin handy. Check your mail over the recycle bin, and then anything that can wait a little while, have a space or a file of mail that can be addressed later. But have a date when later is, whether that's Sunday afternoons is your mail day that you do everything. But the big solution is having a designated home for every category of thing. This is where my purse goes. This is where my keys go. This is where my jacket goes. And then, like I mentioned before, make sure it's somewhere where you naturally drop those items. That way, it's not a new habit that's a headache for you to implement. So, when you have these drop zones and when everyone in the household knows where things go, there are fewer arguments and less chaos. I so many times this year I have read on online and in social media how much mental weight that women carry in the home. A lot of having to manage everything. I have to think about what's for dinner every night. I have to remember all the appointments. I have to think about all the anniversaries and where everything is in the house. And it's a lot of mental load. If everyone in the house knows where things are supposed to be, that is something that is taken off of your mental database. They don't have to run to you every time they need something. And not just women. I mean, a lot of times men as well, but it's just easier if the kids know where things are, especially after a certain age and they can manage on their own. If they know where things are supposed to live and where they can find them, they don't have to always go chasing you down every time they need something. And you don't get interrupted every time someone needs something. The morning rush is a lot less chaotic if everyone knows where their stuff is and they know, okay, I left my backpack is here on the hook, not in the basement, not in the laundry room. It helps everyone function much easier in the house. Lastly, I want to talk about daily reset habits. This is, I think, where things fall apart the most because, for instance, people will hire me to come in and set up systems for them, but then they think they're supposed to magically stay maintained on their own, and that's just not how things work. You have to put in a little bit of work to maintain the system. As an organizer, my job is to create the system and make it easier for you to maintain so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you're tidying up at night or on the weekends. So, what I usually suggest is a 10-minute evening reset. Um, every morning, clear the counters. Don't leave the breakfast stuff out on the counters. Just do it before you head out of the house or before you start work at your home office. And then at the end of the week, if you're not one that's going to read your mail every day, I know I say I prefer for you to do it every day, but if you don't have the time, at least maybe on Saturday or Sunday, just have a dedicated 15, 20 minutes to go through all of your mail and any incoming paper that you haven't addressed yet. With children, something that's been working really well for some of the families that I work with is having a cleanup playlist, maybe a 3-song playlist. And every time you start that in the evening, it's a cue that, oh, yeah, it's time for me to go around and pick up my toys. I've even started with some of the families I work with. It's giving each kid a basket that they know is their pickup basket, and they go around and pick up their toys and their homework and their art supplies and whatever they've left through their tornado through the house, but at least in the evening it gets picked up and put away and it doesn't pile up throughout the week. So try doing these things and see how it works. And you'll notice once your systems are in place and once you have a home for these things, that 10-minute reset may not even take 10 minutes anymore because you know automatically where things belong. So this is just something else to help you implement this 10-minute rule. If you need to, set a timer or like I said, do a playlist, something that's a cue and that keeps you focused for that solid 10 minutes. When it goes off, you don't have to force yourself to continue after that 10 minutes unless you want to. But the biggest thing is consistency. It doesn't have to be something where you're working 3 hours at a time. That's when you get that burnout, that cleanup burnout, and it doesn't get done and it's easy to procrastinate on. Most of us can find 10 minutes in our day to work on these little tidy up habits. What I want you to stop doing is saying, oh, when I have a free weekend, I'm going to clean out the closet. That does not work sometimes because life is busy. The kids have events, you have social events, or sometimes you're just tired. You've worked all week and now I have the weekend free and you're asking me to do more work. I got to pull out everything out of my closet. No. So don't feel like you have to wait for a free weekend to do this. Don't try to declutter when you are utterly exhausted. You don't have to force yourself to do these things. You know, do these when you have your energy. I'm big into understanding your circadian rhythm, like what time of the day you have the most energy. So try to do these things when your energy is high. Don't wait until the end of the day unless that's the only time you really genuinely have, if you're a morning bird or something like that. Also, the big thing is holding on to those guilt items. This is a major, major point of contention with many people that I speak with. Um, we have guilt of holding on to gifts that people have given us or things that have been passed on to us, or maybe something you spent a lot of money on and it didn't work out, but for some reason you cannot let it go. You just always have to remember that the money's already spent. If it was gifted to you, it is yours to do what you want to do with at that point. And even if it's an heirloom or something that's not serving you, um, you don't have to feel like you have to hold on to this thing forever just because it was given to you. So, honor it, take a picture, and pass it on to someone that will love it. And here's the closest thing I can do as a promise to you is when you have decluttered and your space feels lighter, your mind will feel clearer. There's fewer decisions you have to make throughout the day. We're all busy, we all work, we all have a million things going on. The last thing you want to think about is all the little micro things you have to do in the home. Once you can get to that point where the home feels in a state where you want it to be, you can mentally relax, you can physically relax, and your energy will return. You can use all that extra time that you used to spend picking up around the house doing things you like, whether it's a hobby or spending time with your family or traveling or whatever, and not stressing out about the stacks of things that you have to deal with in the home. Because really, at the end of the day, your home is somewhere that should be a place of peace for you, not a source of stress. You deserve a home that supports you and the life that you're living, the life that you want to live. Don't let the stress of being at home and the clutter piles wear you out and help make you lose sleep. So that's really the gist of it. I would love to stay connected to all of you. My contact information is on the screen. You can reach out with any specific questions or to learn more about me and my business. If you scan this QR code, I would love to help you get started on your decluttering journey. So this is a free downloadable 30-day challenge with little micro tasks that you can do over the next month. And there's rest days built in there. So you can at least get the momentum going and get the rhythm going of creating a clutter-free home and less stress on your brain. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me today. And like I said, if you have any questions, I would love to hear from all of you. So thank you so much. And I will let Michelle take it from here.
So, Danae, that was a great presentation. I have questions for you that I'm constantly either getting from clients or things that we're discussing, because obviously I help them with the financial side of things, but what you mentioned in terms of organizing your home, that goes for every stage of life. And I have clients through every stage of life. For those who are in the stage where they are trying to implement your name and declutter, with two E's, can you talk a little bit about how to approach that? Okay, especially during times of transition, retirement, where you're redefining your purpose and how you're going to spend your days, loss of a spouse, where you're redefining the space because there were two and now there's one. And the same thing can be true of divorce, which may or may not overlap with some of the things you talked about earlier with drop zones and kids and things of that nature. But if divorce happens later on, it's similar in terms of trying to figure out, okay, the space was for two, now it's for one.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it really goes back to thinking about what season are you in your life right now and honoring the things that function in that season. Figuring out what things do I need, what things do I love, what things am I using? Those three questions work for any stage of life. So if you're downsizing, those are, the key questions. I'm ready to let go of some things. I don't need this anymore. I don't need all these as many office supplies or whatever it is. Do I use these things? Do I need them? Do I love them? If you are, unfortunately, you're splitting up, same thing. Okay, some of these things were left behind from my spouse, or maybe these are things that we needed as a couple and I don't need anymore. Do I use this? Do I love it? How does this function in my day-to-day life now? Am I going to use it a year from now? So keep thinking in those terms. If you're getting to the point where you need to do some massive decluttering, I usually suggest do it by category versus by room. So start looking at all the books from each different, start looking at all the clothes from each different room. That'll help keep you focused. I think that works for same thing, any stage as well.
Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. And I also heard you say that the 10-minute, I think it was 10 minutes that you mentioned. That's helpful even, for me at this stage. Now, I will admit, confessions of Michelle, I will admit that I struggle with organization like in the home. And I have called upon a professional such as yourself. Her name is Lisa. And she really helped me with putting systems in place. But it's like you said, you have to really make those systems a part of your life or else you go back to your old ways. In the 10-minute thing, it sounds, or strategy, not thing, it sounds relatively relaxed. So is there any structure or any difference when it comes to, I've got 30 years of stuff to declutter. 10 minutes a day, it's going to take a long time. So what would you suggest, whether it's with a professional or on their own?
I usually suggest start with the categories that are less sentimental to you. That way you can start building the momentum. If you dive right into the old love letters and if you're a bibliophile and you start with books, that is going to be hard and it's going to demotivate you and you're not going to want to do that. right? So start with the things that you don't care about as much. If that's office supplies, if that's, old magazines, whatever it is, the easy wins first. I usually like to start in the kitchen because I feel like once your kitchen is in place, everything else it feels good and you want to move on to other areas. But yeah, start small and then build the momentum and work your way up to those sentimental things where you want to sit down and spend more time with and go for the quick wins.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's really helpful because you're right. In so many things, it's so great. Like when you make a list and you get to check things off.
Uh-huh.
And I remember learning this it wasn't really about organization, but it was about like improving your life and particularly your work life. But improving your work life, it helps to improve your personal life as well. And it was about making a list and checking things off, having like small wins before 11 o'clock in the morning. And I still use that. Sometimes I make the wins like I was able to eat breakfast. And believe it or not, that could be challenging for me because sometimes I get into working for clients and it's hard. But I hear what you're saying and I really believe in that concept. Okay, so we talked about decluttering. Well, what about the storm that comes with children and grandchildren? It's so remarkable that nobody really understands it until it happens to them that a little baby can create a huge storm of stuff.
They have so many little things. I know.
And then they start to move and run and walk. And let's say it's the first grandchild or the first child or whatnot. It is just so different for everyone. Like they need more of this and that and da 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 da. So talking about that transition.
I love this question right now because as we're recording this, we are a few days out from Christmas and I just got off the phone with a client and she was like, my kids have so much stuff already. What do I do? And so I love, it doesn't work all the time, but I love the one in, one out. As you're bringing things in, take some things out. What I suggested to her is let them get through the Christmas weekend and then let's review some things. Let's review what we have. And okay, this is the shelf where we're keeping our stuffies or whatever. In order to bring in these, which one of these are you ready to move on from? Also, just that brings me to your boundaries. Have space boundaries for your belongings. There's a quote that we use as organizers. You organize for the space that you have, not the stuff that you have. So even when it comes to the little ones, if you only have this drawer for their little socks and their little onesies and stuff, that's all, that's what your capacity is. And so as more of these things come in, then you let some of them go. But I will say, and might be an unpopular opinion, but I will die on that hill, is that we need to start talking to the people in our lives about what we're trying to do in our homes and what we don't always appreciate, we don't want. Yes, I know it comes from the best place of receiving gifts and your children receiving gifts, but if this is something you're working on, of being more minimal or having a clutter-free home, and you're constantly bringing in things that you have to process and manage from the moment it walks into your door, it's okay to tell your loved ones, like, look, this year I really want to limit the amount of things that are coming in. So what my client said, she had a conversation with her sister and the grandparents. The kids are allowed 3 gifts each. That's it, right? And I know that, like my mother, she is a gift giver, and sometimes I have to tell her, like, I don't need anything. We don't need anything. I appreciate where that's coming from, but please, it's okay to tell them, we appreciate it, but I would appreciate it if you don't do these things.
Okay. Well, you know what? You're right. It's all about boundaries, right? And
you don't have to be mean about it, it's just an honest conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think boundary setting is not about being mean. It's really about being clear with yourself and with others. And that's healthy. It's hard for a lot of women in particular to do. And I would say, parents also of any gender. It's just harder. Okay, so a few months ago, I participated in a webinar about getting your affairs in order. And we talked about all kinds of things like estate planning and also like what to do with your house and different things like that. But obviously, getting organized is one of the ways of getting your affairs in order. What you're talking about is getting your house in order. And something that came up in the estate planning portion was that it's a gift to your family to get that stuff done. I would argue after 25 years of being a financial advisor, I would argue that essentially it's a gift to your family if you get your house literally organized and in order and you do the decluttering yourself. Because if not, somebody, could be a niece, could be a nephew, could be a charity, could be your children, is going to have to do that. I was talking to some, beloved clients recently, and they have been decluttering the family home because a parent is in memory care. And I really gave them props because it's hard to do that. Like you said, you can get caught up in the sentimentality of it all. But it was very smart. It is very smart for them to be doing that now before there's a crisis, before everyone's in full-on grief mode, etc. And just really take the time to do that slowly and methodically. That's actually probably the best example I've seen in 25 years, because most of the time I've literally had clients working on this for 2-3 years, and I'm to the point that I'm like, get a professional to help you. And sometimes they're like, well, we don't want a professional because like there could be money in the back of the cabinet or this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, but you could be there too. It's just about letting someone guide you and work with you, that kind of thing. So I just said a lot, but any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on the money. And in a past conversation we've had, I talked about the Swedish death cleaning, and it's not as morbid as it sounds. It's you spending the time to go through the things and choose the things that you want to pass on to your loved ones intentionally versus just dumping them with all of your belongings that you collected through your lifetime and making it their problem to deal with. Like you brought up, you already, when it's your time and you pass on, now your loved ones have to manage your things. They're already in the throes of grief and mourning and things like that, and is one more thing they have to deal with. And now you take something off of their plate. There's so many questions of, oh, did mom want me to have this, or did she want you to have this, or what's the story behind this? But if you intentionally pass things on and let them know why I'm passing this on to you, it makes things so much more special. And then, because in the end, there's a joke in my family. My sister tells my mom, "You better deal with your things because your other daughter, the organizer, is just gonna give it all to Goodwill. So you figure out what you're doing with it." Which is not true, but it's better if you can make the decisions and help your family out, and it makes the experience more special.
Absolutely. And I had a conversation recently with some clients where we're doing a lot of different things, Roth conversions and updating estate planning. I was meeting with them and their estate planning attorney, etc. And they talked about the fact that they have things from grandparents and parents, and nobody wants these things anymore. So I wonder what you think as a professional about this. But I said, well, maybe it would be good to identify some charities that would actually want these things. Whether it's because they reflect a period of time when that china or whatever was in vogue, or, it helps them with some kind of display or whatnot, or they know how to sell it.
Right.
Because that can be difficult. There are things that we all have that are so sentimental that we do want to keep them, and they're so dear we would never sell them or give them away or whatnot. But we also have to decide, is that something that's so sentimental to the people you care about? Because I've literally seen family members where they're like, I don't have space for this sewing machine or whatever. And yet that sewing machine is really there are people who would love it, like it's vintage, it's either as part of their decor, etc. So can you speak to that? Because I literally have no idea how to help them with that kind of thing, because I'm not you. So talk about how they can find a home for places that they just don't want, for things that they don't want to end up in the landfill and have some kind of meaning and value.
Yeah, I mean, it does take a bit of research, and that's something that we do is we take that burden off of the family's hand or my client's hand. I have a list of what organizations take what items. That way they don't make it to the landfill. And so, you just got to do a little bit of legwork of maybe I need to have an appraiser come in from an antique store and take a look at this china or these coins or, whatever collections there are, even clothes and purses and things like that that can be possibly resold. Even sometimes old publications can go to some kind of archive or research organization that will, put them on display or have them for people to look at. Even sewing materials. There are organizations that donate art supplies to children and things like that. So you just have to do a little legwork and see who takes what. Google is your friend in this, and then even posting things, even if you don't sell them, you'll be amazed what sort of things people are looking for on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or something like that. So some of these niche esoteric things that you may not know what to do with, there is somebody out there looking for it.
Right.
Ask your circle of friends, and then just do a little legwork and find some organizations or some charities that will take specific.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Well, I think those are some of the big things that come up as I am working with folks that overlap with your domain or actually fall fully in your domain. And as I said, full disclosure, confessions of a financial planner, working mom. Definitely, if I hadn't had Lisa help me with the play area, which is now the kid zone, if you want to call it that, or the teen zone, it would still be a wreck. And there would still be things that I was holding on to that I didn't need to. So I thank you, I thank her for the role that you play in helping people such as myself and people such as my mom and others who are in a different stage of life but also need to organize. And maybe they can do it on their own, but they need some guidance as to how, when, where, that type of thing. So you've done a great job talking about those things. Anything else that you would say to me, to us, as you end, especially with all the questions I've asked, and knowing that there's a multi-generational group of people watching this, because fortunately I'm pleased to say that I am able to work with multiple levels of families.
Yeah, I'll go back to saying, think about where you are, what stage of life you're in right now, what your season of life, what things you're enjoying and loving in life right now. And yes, it's great to have the sentimental things, or yes, it's great to look into the future of I might need this. But if those might needs or used to need items are causing you the headache, then it's time to reconsider, can I let this go? Just really think about what you're doing now, live in this moment.
Excellent.
Make that work forever. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's great, because I mean the whole purpose of this program as we start out the new year is to start off on the right foot and put sustainable things in place that bring joy to our lives and bring some level, hopefully, we're striving for peace and calm and things of that nature. That was a great conversation with Danae Walker.